not see eye to eye on the conflict or their geopolitical goals. Well, for more on the story, and it's a developing story, we're joined in studio by our international relations expert, Dr. Emmanuel Navon. Dr. Navon, always nice to see you in the studio. So a very interesting meeting happening today. Two powerful sides, different agendas. First, take us through what are each hoping to get out of today's meeting.
So first of all, the Russians really want to finish Idlib. They want to help Assad completely reconquer Syria and retake control of the country. Regarding the Turks have been supporting some of the rebels against Assad, and they don't want an all-out attack against Idlib because that would bring thousands, dozens of thousands of refugees within Turkey, and Turkey does not want new refugees. So Turkey would like to have some kind of a ceasefire, some kind of a compromise, but the Russians are not really interested. And that's really what they're negotiating, because there is some leverage that Turkey has on Russia also. Russia is willing to listen to Turkey because at the end of the day, Russia has the ability to help Assad reconquer Idlib, but it will need Turkey, the collaboration of Turkey and other countries for the reconstruction of Syria, and also to reach a political agreement regarding the future of the Assad regime.
So with leaders like Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Vladimir Putin at loggerheads, and as you say, with their own differing agendas, what realistically can we expect to see come out of a meeting like today?
So it's all a question of the leverage that each side has on the other side. As I said, Turkey is very fearful of a massive number of refugees entering its country, and Putin is aware of that. That's the weak point of Erdogan. What is the weak point of Putin? He needs Turkey at the end of the day for the day after, for a political solution. So what the compromise is going to be probably is that the Russians and Assad will anyways try to finish Idlib, but to make sure that no refugees or a small number of refugees only enter Turkey. And what will he demand from Erdogan? Well, we know that Erdogan in the past demanded the departure of Assad from the regime, and he's been toning down this demand. And it looks like basically what Putin is going to obtain from Erdogan is to give up this demand and accept that Assad shall stay in place. This looks like the compromise that is taking shape between the two leaders, or will be taking shape today in the meeting.
And while these discussions continue, obviously a very worrying time for people who are living in Syria and specifically in Idlib. Let's take a listen right now to some of what people are saying right now.
For the sake of the chair of power, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad sold his country and his people. It's as if his mother told him to bring down the Syrian population from 24 million to 5 million if it means staying in power. He sold the Syrian people to the Russians and the Iranians.
We're protesting to tell everyone that Bashar Assad is a terrorist. Russia right now claims that the place is full of terrorists, but we are just normal citizens, as you've seen with your own eyes. God willing, these protests will produce the desired results.
So Dr. Navon mentioned there, of course, of Syria's Bashar al-Assad. He'll be watching, obviously, what's going on at the meeting today. What's his best outcome?
Well, Assad obviously wants to make sure that he stays in power, that he retakes control of what is left of Syria. And I think this is pretty much guaranteed for him because thanks to Putin, thanks to the Russians, his victory now is guaranteed. It's a foregone conclusion. The only question really is, as we mentioned before, is Erdogan, the Turkish president, going to completely give up on his demand that Assad goes after the end of the war? And this looks very likely because this is really the only thing that he can offer that Putin can demand from him. And it looks like it's going to happen. So it looks very much like the situation is going to be that Assad is going to remain there because that is the interest of the Iranians, of the Russians. And the United States is not really interested in what's going on in Syria at this point. And the Europeans don't really have much leverage except for the fact that Putin wants the money to rebuild Syria. But at this point, they're not really involved in the Syrian crisis. And as I said, the United States, the Trump administration has already clarified that it doesn't really have a dog in that fight except for getting rid of the Islamic State, which has been mostly achieved.
And just lastly, the humanitarian crisis, obviously, in Idlib is still dominating concerns from all over the world. Are the leaders really talking about this? Is this a priority for them at this meeting?
Well, unfortunately, the humanitarian crisis in Syria has been going on for 7 years, and the West has not really taken care of anything in Syria. Beside a few strikes last year with the Americans, the French and the British. So that is not new, unfortunately. The lack of interest of the West in the humanitarian crisis in Syria, of course, Idlib would be the worst if the war goes on there and if the Russians and Assad really finish Idlib. But this crisis has been going on for 7 years, and unfortunately the West has been very absent.
Dr. Emmanuel Navon, thank you so much for your input on this developing story. We'll be here.